forward to have this conversation, and Tony definitely want to have this talk with you, especially on Ruto's cabinet recycling, would I say recycling plant. But then again, a lot of perspectives to look at. There's the political angle to it, there's the leadership aspect. And many have argued that maybe the president is being held at hostage. Is that the scenario? Or we are simply living or reliving what we'll call historical Moism? Welcome to the conversation. Once again, my name is Likuyani Eli. I'll be hosting alongside Brief Scoop. And I do look forward to engaging with all of you in a very civic and informative session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mizani. I apologize about the previous space. I started the space at 5 and it wouldn't come on. I tried to change the time so that we could still start it. So it actually shows up as pending, but I cannot start it. I went into it, cannot start it. It's just frozen. So anyway, no worries. Here we are. We have experienced this before, Mizani, right? So, but we keep going. We start new spaces and we keep going. Tony, good to see you. We wanted to have this conversation, especially with you, because of this cabinet recycle. As I love how Mizani phrases it, the recycling plant. What do we think of this recycling plant? Is it simply a case of incompetence? Is it simply a case of Ruto just being very tone deaf? Or is he hostage to the old politics of sharing out positions to appease people? We'll be getting into that, and we'll also be hearing from all of you. We'll be getting feedback from all of you. But for now, let's introduce Tony. Tony Gashoka is a veteran journalist. Tony, you don't need too much of an introduction, but we'll still let you introduce yourself. Why don't you take the mic and do that?
Good afternoon. Well, most people say or call me TG. And yes, I've been a practicing journalist for a couple of years. And the most popular of which, by the way, Crossfire is coming back tomorrow at 6 p.m. for one last show on Kiss 100 because Patrick Kwako is retiring. And so the old gang of Tony Gashoka, Mukisa Kithure, and of course, Judith Ogori replaced the late Mutula Kilonzo, who was also replaced by Otieno Kajwang. So tomorrow we're going to do 1 hour just to remind ourselves how we used to do it in the 90s. But that was then, and this is now. We are just here to discuss this cabinet disaster. And I will just let Brief Scoop, first of all, talk to a number of other people, and I'll come in later. But I can say from the beginning, if it walks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck and looks like a duck, it is a duck. But we'll take it off from there when you come back to me.
Sawa, Tony.
I love what Tony just said there, that if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, might be we are talking to one. So when you talk about the crossfire, we're already in the fires right now. Should I say in the flames?
I'm sorry. Hold on 1 second. Mizani was still presenting. Maybe you couldn't hear him. Hold on, whoever is speaking. Let Mizani just...
Yeah, actually, I thought maybe I was the one who is not audible enough. But again, pardon me, guys. I'll be settled in a few. So excuse my roaming noise. When Tony mentions the crossfire and the gang that discuss politics all the way from 90s, I'm also impressed because looks like we are back to history because nothing seems to be changing. We are here discussing the very things Tony and the gang discussed so many years back. Some of you were not born when Tony was being the real deal in the market. I'm not saying in any way it's not the big deal, but looking at what they did back then and what we're doing right now, we will be asking ourselves, why is it that we keep recycling the same stories, we keep talking about the same issues, and nothing seems to be changing, except the fact that the same political players are regrouping themselves in a manner which they want to, what I will call, take the helms of power in this country, and to this extent not exercise the wishes of the people. Therefore, when we are having this talk tonight, and this afternoon for that matter, I'm hoping we can open up to those historical facts and our today reality and be able to look and juxtapose these issues and ask ourselves, what is it we are not doing right? And what is it we need to start doing right? Is it that President Ruto is incompetent, like you put it, Briscoe? To some extent, I am lost in between. I don't know if I should say he's an incompetent leader. Should I say he is not smelling the coffee? Or should I say he's actually playing the chess master? I have no clue on how I can describe today's administration. And therefore, I'm just hoping while we are having this talk, we'll be able to expound on those issues. Briscoe, back to you.
Thank you, Mizani. Thank you, Tony. You know, the thing is, you're so right in that even during the campaign, that's one thing that is very dangerous whenever you're in any kind of a battle or fight or war is to underestimate your opponent, right? And in for all intents and purposes, what is happening right now in Kenya with Gen Z going up against the political establishment cannot be described as anything other than a war. And so it's a war of wit, right? Definitely a war of wits, a war for the heart of Kenya. I think we underestimate Ruto to our own peril. And you don't get to be president in Kenya with all of the political players and all of the formations without having some wit about you, without having some skill about you. So, you know, it could be that he's all of these things, tone deaf, incompetent, or he could be hostage to old politics, or he could be a chess master. So let's hear from you guys. I'm going to go with everyone. I'm going to go in the order as that I added people. So let's start with June Sigay. You were up first. So let's hear from you. Your thoughts on the question at
Hi,
hand.
everyone.
Hey.
Hi, guys. Very privileged to be on this space. Tony, I know you from a very long time as a very prominent journalist in our days. We are millennials, and we are saying we're not keeping off this fight because we have to protect our children, our children's children, or there'll be no hope for this country. When we started this fight, I can remember I started this fight at 19 years old, and we were clamoring then for the Constitution, we're clamoring for the referendum. And Ruto has always been on the wrong side of history. We know who he is, we know what he's capable of. But I just want to say one or two things because I've been talking on other spaces, and I just want to make it clear that you're not dealing with a normal human being here. So I thought, how can we be strategic about it? I know I'm going to talk about the cabinet recycle. We have to attack strategically. How are we going to do that? I was one of the first people 2-3 weeks ago, and I was clamoring to the youth, guys, don't go to the State House, stop talking about Uhuru Park. There are a few people you have to attack. You have to attack very strategic places like the airport, UN headquarters, or the proximities to that. There's no one who's scared like Mzungu. I got a call today because I study political science, international relations, and I deal with international investment in this country. And therefore, I'm very privileged to know all of these people. I know them very personally. And I'm sure if Tony looks back into it, he'll understand who I am, but it's fine. I don't want to bring that in. I have everything to lose by talking like this because I'm still in the same profession. And if these people wanted to find me, they'd find me in the next 5 minutes. I had mentioned that Kindiki is coming back, that Chirchir is coming.
I stopped hearing June. Is it just me, or is anyone else? Is anyone else hearing June?
I lost her as well. I was listening to her and lost her.
Can you hear me?
We hear you now, June. Go try again.
Okay, so the thing is, to talk on a Twitter stage, I'm never allowed. So I just hope we get what we're. I hope we hear something from me today. Anyway, as we speak, the cabinet has been formed. All the names have been put there, and time will tell. I'm right with it. Now we're talking about tier 2, who are the PSs, because the cabinet slots have been filled. It's the same old name, guys. People are rotating and putting the same people. I'm so pissed off and I'm so passionate against this, despite whatever repercussions may befall me. Because we have tried to advise these people. It is tone deaf. You're dealing with mercenaries. You're dealing with, at this point, I think they're all mad. At this point, because even we said, I mean, even these elections, you're trying to blame your political leaders. Do you know an MCU was paying 5 million? A senator was paying 7. A governor was moving up to 100 million. Now the CSs are there. So it doesn't even matter who is there. Do you know when Kindiki used to come to law school? He would not even come with any material. He would lecture from his brain. He was brilliant, a professor at 27 years old. Brilliant man. And you can see, because power corrupts and absolute power corrupts more. What is the solution? To have the systems in place, to get rid of all of them and start afresh. And I've been one of the biggest proponents of leaderless, because now you can't go and say, who is your leader? Because you'll be bought. Even whoever it is, I can see this space is brief. Sorry, guys, I'm not too familiar with Twitter. Whoever is hosting this space, there's someone who will come to you and will offer you a price and you will be bought. You will be bought. Either through threats or through money. So I've always been a proponent of leaderness. But today somebody called me because I told you it is my work to deal with investors. And they called me from New York, and they have several investments here in Kenya. And they said, June, we did this. We did this in various countries. But what happened is when we reached there, and we didn't have a leader, and we said, we trust all of us who have been in the struggle. And all of a sudden, people started fighting against each other. So I just want to challenge everyone today. What is our plan? If it's a manifesto, what are we working on? If the constitution, what are we working on? If the leader is going ahead, who are we thinking about? Because the current,
that's a good, June, that's a really good place to close and move on to the next person.
Thank you.
But I'll let you wind up. I'll let you wind down for 30 seconds if you weren't completely done.
Okay.
Okay, it sounds like you're done.
We have to hit them white hats. We have to hit them white hats. Hello?
Yes, we hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, we have to hit the white hats, and white hats is economic sabotage. I'll tell you why. When an investor says they're going to move to Rwanda, they're going to move to South Africa, there's so many options of where they can be in Africa. These people won't allow it because that is where their interest is. This is all a game about money. We're talking about people with trillions in their account. So economic sabotage is it. That's why I suggest places that are close to that economic sabotage. So guys, let's be strategic. Let's not talk about going to State House. There you'll be killed. Block an airport, block an embassy, block something like that. That is my final thought. I would have talked much more, but even I'm so happy to be here and have been heard today.
Thank you, June. Tony, go ahead.
I want to say jambo to June, and I want to reassure her and many people on this platform that a few very good friends of ours, Brief Scoop himself, Mizani, and Wanjiru, we got together and said, look, why can't we start a space where people will feel safe, where the money and intimidations will not work? And therefore, June, I want to assure you, when you see Tony Gashoka's name, you can be sure that Ruto himself knows that that's a problem. And he knows that this is a no-go area. So there will be a platform. We'll be trying to talk to you twice a week if we can, to allow everyone to communicate through a forum that is trusted. But very briefly, I wanted to talk about why I think that Ruto made a disaster in these cabinet appointments. I think people are talking about recycling, but it's even worse than that, because it's now clear that, for example, in the case of the education minister, he went and got his running mate to come and replace him. In case of, I think, the former Minister for Agriculture, he got his PA or aide to come and replace him. And of course, the Minister for Interior, despite all the outcry of the people who lost their lives, they say that IG Kome, resigned. But there is this principle of political responsibility, and neither the president nor the Minister for Interior has taken political responsibility. The reason I'm raising these issues is that it seems to me that when Ruto on the 11th of July 2024 dissolved his cabinet ab initio, he was actually doing so because he wanted to, derail the protest and to blow steam off. In other words, in my view, it was a diversionary tactic, because less than 10 days later, I think exactly 8 days later, he returns 6 of them to the portfolios, and many of them to the ones they had, with the exception of 2. And then all of a sudden, when he's calling a broad-based cabinet, he's not broad-based at all. And behind
just me, or did we lose Tony?
Your guess is as good as mine. I guess Tony might have had some interruption. But,
Okay.
briefly, there's something Tony is saying, and I also listened to June's submission, part of it, because as I said earlier on, excuse me, I was on the move. She mentioned some sort of frustration. Can you hear me?
I don't hear Mizani.
Yes, can you hear me?
Mizani, I don't hear you.
Brief Scoop, can you hear me?
Yes, we are getting you.
reshuffle of the cabinet actually is a rearrangement of political power. And all it is saying, look, to the Jay-Z's, Mutadu, I'm reshuffling, I'm returning the cabinet, Mutadu. Let me.
Tony, you're in and out. And I also don't hear Mizani. Mizani, can you try again?
Can you confirm you can hear me, Brief Scoop?
I hear you now.
Awesome. I think Tony has to check on his connection, probably receiving a call or something. But there's something he had mentioned in terms of Mutadu what, and also June earlier on was expressing some sort of frustration on the kind of country we live in today, looking for options. And I think that's where we all have to be looking at. Are these options that we keep suggesting actually valid enough? Will they change the current status quo for the politicians? And when we talk about the broad-based government, which President Ruto was suggesting, maybe I want to engage Tony and ask him, is it because at one point that is what he planned to do, and then when the Gen Z decided this is not happening, the likes of Azimio now pulling back, had to give him a return to the board kind of formula. So maybe that's something I would like for Tony to look at, even as we process the conversation. Brief Scoop.
Thank you, Mizani. Tony, let's see if you're able to speak, if we can hear you.
Were you able to hear me before?
No, you dropped when you start towards the you dropped about a minute ago when you were saying Mutadu, we are recycling. You are saying, oh, this is worse than recycling. I think that's where we lost you.
Just then a small one for what Mizani is asking for. The issue of governments bringing in first aid kits to survive have begun since the first president. Jomo Kenyatta in 1967 removed Jaramogi and brought Daniel Moi in what was called the Little General Election of 1966. And that was when Kadu joined KANU, and Odinga was banished to the Kenya People's Union. And after that, if you go during the Moi era, Moi had 2 situations. One of them, he brought Odinga to KANU. and Odinga became the Secretary General of KANU in a marriage between NDP, a Tinga Tinga party, and KANU, a mama na baba. And later, President Moi also brought in what was called the Dream Team that was led by Richard Leakey and 6 other permanent secretaries, including Titus Naikuni, and so forth, in order to anchor his government from IMF and World Bank sanctions. So you go to Mwai Kibaki, and he came with the famous government of national unity that had an impossible cabinet of 44, where he brought in Odinga as the prime minister. And of course, the former president Uhuru Kenyatta and Odinga had also had the handshake. And now here again, you're coming to this situation with William Ruto. And the issue is, in all those instances, political players, political operatives have decided to defeat the agitation of citizens by rearranging political power to hoodwink them, buy time, and be able to continue with their policies. So what I'm saying is, whereas we are, our guns are drawn towards Ruto, this has been a habit for which Odinga has a medal. Odinga has been the most prolific of all, starting from Moi to Kibaki to Uhuru. Odinga has, perfected the art of losing elections and still remaining in power. And therefore, Ruto must have known that I dangle this and Odinga will be singing. And I will come back to the mic after we hear more of the participants' brief scope.
Asante sana. I wanted to, June, I brought you back because your name has been called a couple of times. If you have anything to give back, and then we'll recycle speakers. June, your name was invoked.
Okay. I think I understand why my name was invoked, because I've been trying to be on this Twitter space and I'm never given the opportunity to, because for lack of a better word, I'm tired of this bullshit, right? I'm tired of us trying to clamor for something and then at the last minute, a few individuals betray us. I understand that money is a factor here. Power is a factor here, and we all want money, we all want power. But I even tried to actually invade some of these Gen Z spaces and tell you guys, the struggle doesn't get any easier. When you're older and you have children, it just accumulates or intensifies all the anger that you have. And so what a lot of my age mates have done is maybe you become wash, you do illegal business, sleep around. Ask yourself why all these female politicians, they are not your best minds. It's not that we lack best minds, but all these nominations in all these political parties. And by the way, guys, we are going to stand independent parties. If you're good and your policies are good, you will be chosen. That's what we're going to do now, going forward, because we're not going to be enslaved anymore by the powers that be. And therefore, it is why I'm saying the best solution to this is economic sabotage, because these people will fear that. If you go to State House every day, who cares? If you go to Parliament every day, who cares? But you block and you interfere with the international community because we depend on them. Leave these ones that are funding IMF and World Bank, leave them alone. I'm talking about
Every time June mentions that, she gets cut off. Is it just me? I think we lost you, June. All right, June.
Okay.
There you are.
It's all about people always block me, because I know all these individuals, they always block me. So forget about me. I'm just saying this guy has to go. I know him personally. He's not a good guy. If anything, he's the incarnation of the worst person you can ever imagine. So forget about me, but just try and remember what I'm saying, the people who to attack. So that we're not on the streets for 5 months down the line, then we're talking about 1,000 lives lost. We have been there. We have lost lives, a lot of lives. So I'm just trying to ensure that everybody is strategic. The cabinet appointments have been done. We are now at the PS level. If you want me to name for you the cabinet, maybe I'll send a text. because they'll never allow me to speak for that long.
All right. Please do so, June, and let's hear from somebody else. Thank you, June. Please do send that. You can DM me. Emoru, go ahead. Over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, the host. This should be brief scoop, right? Or Mizani 254. Hello, anyone can hear me?
Host and co-host, we hear you. Go ahead.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Emoru Moses Willington, and I was an aspirant in the last election. I ran for senator in Busia against Okiya Omtatah. And I have a few things I want to highlight to this group about war, because I've been in the front line of war, in the front of fire, and I've experienced on how war is won and how it is played. The first thing that will kill this war is the idea of identity. Like you see, most of the time, people, I think, lost confidence in people like Kuru Aukot. Every time they come on TV, they want to come and say, oh, I am the one who wrote this constitution. I did ABCD, ABCD. Same thing happened with PLO Lumumba. Every time you want to show people how you're successful, you're the one who started this, you initiated this, people will never follow you. I wouldn't like to mention this, but I've been in the commands of police force where we structure on how we fight and all that before I left the service. And every time you try to show an identity, all people you fight with lose confidence in you, and they will not fight for you because they know they're fighting for your success, because you're the one who is going to. We are in the mid of war. And I hate these statements where everyone says, I did this, I did that, I'm the one who is doing this, I started this. In this moment, when this vibe is there for this change, it's the only moment that Kenya has. If we lose this moment, we lose it forever. Because sisi tunaishi kwa shamba la wanyama. And I've been in the diaspora for about 10 years as well. And I've listened to people in the diaspora where they have always complained, tried to wish, when you're outside there, you see how Kenya is suffering and you see how countries are developing, how they put up their policies, how people cooperate, and how people give selfless service for continuity and prosperity of their country. That goodwill is not here in the country. And it's the only opportune moment that we have right now to be able to set up ourselves.
Thank you, Emoru.
Now, we go forward.
This is an opportune moment that we must not lose. I'll give you 30 seconds to wind up, and then we can move on to somebody else.
So one thing I would want us to do is to capitalize on the weaknesses of your opponent. It's like a war. We've already set the stage. Others are the other side. We are on this side. So it's an opportune moment to always look at the weaknesses and capitalize on that. At a moment when the president is tensed, that was the moment to hit. We lose that moment, we lose it forever. I think that's my summary point.
Pardon me, brief scoop. I am one student who hates taking notes minus asking questions. And this is the reason. Whatever Emoru just presented here, it's a song I've listened to enough times. It's almost becoming a lullaby to me. And I dare ask, when we are having this conversation as a nation, what exactly is the war we are fighting? Are we fighting a political war? Are we fighting an economic emancipation? Or are we fighting individuals? Because it's okay to say we are at war, but unless we can identify what we are fighting for, it's almost impossible to realize when we are winning. And I'm hoping as speakers come in, they can be able to address that question. Thank you.
Allow me to respond in less than a minute on the same. This is a clearly political war, for the reason that as much as we fight for economic emancipation and everything in Kenya is dictated politically. Whether you want to talk about development, you want to talk about governance, you want to talk about everything, we are held hostage because of our political decisions and our political leaders, our political actors. So everything that we do for us to win, then we have to come out in a political, we have to enter into the political dimension and in the political front to be able to dislodge those people who are holding us hostage.
I can't hear the speaker well. I don't know whether it's a connection issue. Anybody else who have...
I can hear you well.
Emoru, were you done speaking? Because you did go quiet.
Yes, I was done. Unless if you want to come, you want me to come again.
All right, thank you. Yeah, no, Louis, Emoru was done. Tony, jump in.
Just to clarify the issue of war, to correct my brother from Busia, war by definition, war is a series of battles. So war is not one event. War is the outcome or the launch of a conflict. But within the launch of a conflict and the outcome, there is a series of battles. And there is no contradiction with an air or a sea or a land battle. And there might be, as he says, war on several fronts. It could be on the front of rights and rights to assemble and to protest, on issues of taxation, like the finance bill, on the issue of corruption and governance, like is the issue with the fertilizer and so forth. And therefore, those series of battles don't have to be fought in one theater or at one day, but the sum total of those battles becomes the war. And if you win enough battles, and even some small ones, then you win the war.
100%. War is a series of battles. Let's hear from Louis.
Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate this opportunity. Thank you, Mizani. Thank you, Brief Scoop. Thank you, Tony, as well, and other speakers and other listeners too waiting. I really wish to really put insight on what we are seeing as Kenyans. So the youths were protesting against the finance bill, and the motive changed from the finance bill, and it headed to dissolve the cabinet. And the end project of the protest was Ruto to go. After the dissolution of the cabinet, I think due to public demand, people really conveyed their interest that we should not see a motive whereby the president would be really interested to recycle the cabinets who were sent home. But from the look of things, we are seeing some things to do like favoritism, because there is no way you can sack a CS in education, Ezekiel Machogu, and replace his deputy during gubernatorial race to
I guess everyone is allowed to speak 30 seconds before they get cut off. But we'll keep going. Louis, unfortunately, we've lost you. Try. Could you try again, Louis?
Maybe British Group will save some time once they are ready. What we can advocate for is if you get cut off and you join the space, kindly raise up your hand. We'll give you priority to go ahead and make your statements. But I'd love to engage more speakers. And ladies, if you're here and you love to contribute, don't feel shy. This is not a men's den conversation. Otherwise, it becomes boring, and then we'll need to have another vote to have women representatives on Twitter Spaces, and I don't want us to do that. So, Richard, as you come in, we are looking at the cabinet recycle. To some extent, President Ruto has been called tone deaf. I saw one of the dailies publishing the headline as tone deaf president, or was it Ruto tone deaf? Maybe that's where Brief got his inspiration from. Is he competent? Is he being held at hostage to the old politics? Maybe you have some insights to that. I'd love to listen from you.
Thank you, Mizani. Could you please confirm you can hear me?
Yeah, proceed.
Yeah, thank you, Mizani. So I would just like to pick from the last statement you've said. Is he still stuck in the old politics? And I'd actually say the answer.
I don't hear Richard, do you?
Yes, I can hear Richard. All right,
All
we're
right.
gonna just shuffle this, Richard. Let me do this, Richard. Don't disappear from the space. I'm dropping and adding you back. Otherwise, it's very impossible for this host to be able to follow if he can't be able to hear the presenters who are making their statements. But in the meantime, we are looking at the cabinet recycle. Do you feel that the president President Ruto is tone deaf, does not listen to the Kenyans, did not understand what they were demanding for, or is simply incompetent as a president, or is it his administration at large? Or definitely, maybe somebody is hosting the president. He's being hosted. He's as hostage with all politics. Richard.
But that's next time.
Briscoe, can you hear me now?
Yes, I hear you now, Richard.
All right, so sorry about that. So somebody just keeps reporting your space. That's why you've been having these issues, but we have backup here. So I'll just begin by agreeing with what Mizani posed as a question to say that Ruto is still stuck in the old politics. Moi made a prophecy some time back and said that Khan would rule for 100 years. And for as far as I'm concerned, that prophecy has always been true. And if we have genuine, Christian, Muslim, or Hindu, whatever, praying people in this country, that's one thing we actually have to fight. And I know Tony talked about, in a war, he's trying to probably explain, what the concept of war would actually mean. But we are fighting all politics here. If you actually go pre-independence and what was happening, I'd actually like to take the example of Jaramogi. So Jaramogi had advocated to have Kenyatta come join government. But if you actually check the struggle in the 50s, in the 1950s, shortly before you had Malcolm Donald, who was the last governor before the colonial rule ended, the British had actually tried to convince Kanu and Kadu to go to some sort of coalition for them to even have discussions of negotiating of how the constitution would actually come into play. All right. You had people like Tom Mboya, you had people like Jaramogi, you had Kenyatta, Kibaki's. They all had differences in terms of how this country should be run economically. But they had to form some sort of false sense of unity to come together. And I think Duncan Degwa writes very well. It was some sort of transient unity that, people should come up together and, unite for a particular cause. But deep down, they had deep-seated issues, And Jaramogi, for example, was really celebrating because he had to be brought back to government because he was locked out of the arrangement that was done during that government of national unity, we'd actually call it. So if you study Kenyan politics, I'm not really an expert or professor of history, and other people who are that, but as I look at it, the very same issues of people having to come forth whereby they put interest above everything else is actually what you're playing at, because we lost a very good opportunity. Kenyatta was a firm believer that ethnic and tribal, of strengthening was more important than, nationalization. I don't want to go into there. So I want to tie this to the issue of the cabinet reshuffles. Cabinets are formed in Kenya based on interest. This issue of saying that you're forming cabinet to be competent and all that, it's actually what we should advocate for. But these guys are still stuck in the old system. We have a new constitution, yes, but their brains, hearts, and minds are still living in the old constitution, whereby they believe that regions and people should be brought together. Again, if you study history, Jomo Kenyatta was a big proponent of saying that every politician should at least aim to have ethnic inclusion first before we have a bigger discussion of, national politics and all that. The Jaramogis are always like, let's decentralize everything else from a central government. Tom Mboya had his own ideas of how the economy should be run. To an extent, he actually went ahead at some point and made sure that he actually had to break the vice presidency into 8 regions so that he actually could neutralize the powers of a few people. So the same playbook of the old tricks is actually what you're seeing here. Ruto is not tone deaf, in my own opinion. This guy is the last beam of hope of how the old regime is looking like. And the Railas, Kalonzos, and all these guys, much as they'd want to wear a garb of wanting to move forward to the future, they're still stuck in the old days. So I just want to finish off by saying this. I don't want to make too many statements, but I just wanted to answer what Mizani is saying, because so that Kenyans understand, we are not just fighting a system. We are fighting a philosophy of the old versus the new. The second revelation came with its own set of ideas. The third one seems like it's there, but the long gone and ingrained system of doing things and bad politics is actually what we're trying to fight. And how we are able to topple that, I think time will tell as we keep applying this pressure. So do I expect Ruto to bring competent people in cabinet and drop interest, regional interest, and power games plays here and there? The answer is no. As we've said, these people understand pressure. And I think Pascal will be one scientist that they would have to study and how his pressure works, because that's the only thing they understand. I think I'll leave it there for now, Mizani. I know I've not discussed cabinet, but I felt it's important I go and give that historical context. Thank you.
And bearing that historical context, I can't help wondering then, if this is an age-old Kenyan problem, then clearly it does look like the same solutions are being applied again. And I guess I don't know if it's too soon to move on to then what would Kenyans like to see? What is an alternative? What is the alternative to the old politics? If it's not mere incompetence, because I don't think Ruto is incompetent, by the way, because he's a hard worker, right? He might be tone deaf, he might be incompetent in terms of management, but he's definitely a workhorse. What would we like to see if this is the politics we've had from time immemorial? Tony, do you want to jump in here to address that, what has been said so far, and also that question?
Yes, I think first of all, I want to emphatically reply to Richard and tell him the difference between the history he's reading is the 2010 Constitution. Richard, you need to understand that when countries and democracies grow, there are points in their history that become definitive. In the US, one could argue it was the civil rights movement, because since the Constitution of the US, it was the most significant thing that changed the architecture of how America is governed. And in France, the French Revolution. So I must say here, without any fear of contradiction, that the second liberation was crystallized in the proclamation and promulgation of the 2010 Constitution, which in part created Kenya under Chapter 4 to be a multi-party democracy, where the government would be opposed by an opposition. And a strong opposition would hold the government of the day to account so that the people get a better government. Even before the 2010 Constitution, there were great leaders of the official opposition. There was Jaramogi himself, later Wamalwa Kijana, followed by Emilio Mwai Kibaki, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, were all leaders of the official opposition to hold the government to account. And at the time they held that position, the government of the day had to respond every day in parliament and in the media to what they were saying about the government not running well. Why am I bringing this question? I'm bringing this question because where Richard must understand is that the fact that we had the 2010 Constitution elected Mwai Kibaki's government, after which it elected, Uhuru Kenyatta's government. And from that point on, Kenyans' expectations of government are not the same as they were in 1963, when there was Majimbo and other things. In the 2010 order, we have a situation where people have a Bill of Rights, where people are right to form political parties and opinions, where people can picket peacefully, where there is no detention without trial, where there is the rule of law, where we have a Supreme Court to be able to arbitrate any disputes that we have in elections. So what I want to say is that William Ruto is governing as though he was born in 1963. And that is why he can't understand the Jay-Z of 2024, because they have been born of the 2010 Constitution. They are beneficiaries of the gains of the 2010 constitution. And therefore, the political order we are discussing today is not the yesterday. It's like saying when women did not vote, and therefore can we discuss the role of women? We are talking a time when women vote as men do. We are talking a time when there is a new order. Now, in the cabinet reshuffle last week, what William Ruto was trying to do was to defeat the will of people during elections. His government was elected. He's trying to poach people from the opposition because he cannot govern with the people he was elected with. And that compromises the quality of the opposition. And that is why the stand by Azimio to say we are not voting is very important. Because there is no point having general elections and a president can buy the opposition. So I want to be clear that one of the disasters that William Ruto is facing is a disaster of leadership and inability to even understand what is a coalition. He's governing under the Kenya Kwanza coalition, where he signed an agreement with several parties, Musalia Mudavadi, Wetangula, and others. And now he's betraying them in order to sign another one with the ODM. ODM itself signed agreements with other political parties who are saying we are not voting. So we are getting into a very murky situation where, because of William Ruto's political problems, the whole multi-party architecture of our country is being thrown astray. And we must be able to discuss the effects of that and how that will affect elections in the future.
How that will affect elections in the future. I can't help wondering, Tony, though, and the room and Mizani, even the 2010 Constitution. I think for me, reading what the current protests are about, I can't help wondering, even that 2010 Constitution, is it working for us the way it should? Is it just a question of implementation, or is it a question of the actual architecture of it? Mizani, do you want to jump in and we can go around? Geoffrey
I would love to have Geoffrey come in first, but if he's ready. Otherwise, I will also want to welcome Mariam to make her statements. Then we'll have Rabble. But as that happens, there's an issue that you're raising about the 2010 Constitution. I am not the best student when it comes to the Constitution and every article of that 2010 Constitution. But I can tell you for free, there has been deliberate measures to not only ignore the Constitution, but to ensure that it is not implemented in totality. Every single thing we are raising today on these spaces, to a bigger percentage, has been addressed with the 2010 Constitution. When we talk about hiring incompetent CSS, or rather appointing incompetent CSS, everything we are complaining about those CSS is in that Constitution. And to some extent, last week I asked us, how is it possible that every single, or rather most of the decision the current Kenya Kwanza administration has made, to some extent, either have been overruled with the courts or have been termed unconstitutional? What is the issue with this specific administration? Maybe let's have Geoffrey, followed by Mariam, then Rabble. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Annie. Hello?
Yes, kindly proceed. Unless we tell you we can't hear you, just proceed. We want to save a lot of time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now, and thanks you for having Tony, because I know Tony will juxtapose the historical perspective and the current issues that we have. I want to say this. Ruto is presiding over a good example of bad governance. He's not incompetent, as maybe others want to put it, but he's cunning. He's cunning in the fact that he knows what is right, but he's avoiding it. Now, is it called recycling of CSS or appointing fresh CSS? there's nothing like recycling. He is testing waters. He is living in denial. He's not alive to the fact that things have changed. But this is something, there's something big around it. Why do you think Toya, Kindiki come back? Why are they the best among the 50 million plus Kenyans? The answer is definitely yes. These guys, maybe they have done some things which Kenyans are not aware.
Now that is speculation, and it's too much speculation. If you have a real issue, bring it up, please. I want you to utilize your time.
I'm saying this. These yeses, maybe there's something they know that we don't. And pushing them away.
Brief Scoops, I think we lost Geoffrey, and I don't want to seem or sound rude, but when we speculate too much, we lose the essence of this conversation. We can try and theorize the conversation, but when you start telling us maybe and there's something they know we don't know, you're not adding value to us. So respectively so, that kind of submission we cannot really substantiate it here. So let's look at it as a rumor. Mariam.
Yes, thank you very much for this opportunity, Mizani. And I hope I'm clear. If I break, kindly let me know because I'm a bit far from the Wi-Fi. So that's a very interesting question you're asking. Is Ruto tone deaf, incompetent, or a hostage to all politics? I found myself asking myself some questions lately, and I think in the last 1-2 days. And my question to myself and to anyone here would be, are we communicating to the president clearly? Are we communicating to the Kenyans who are not part of this movement to change clearly? That is really my biggest question, because communication is a two-way channel. So most of the time, the burden will lie with the person who's communicating to pass their message clearly to the other person, and not to leave any room for the other person to interpret their message. So my question again is, are we sending a clear message to the president? Are we really telling him what we want or what we expect him to do? When it comes to the cabinet, do we just call it reshuffle now? I remember people were saying that he needs to fire the CSs. And then somehow he happened to do it. And then after he did it, people on the ground again were saying that, okay, how can you fire everyone? It means that you're actually incompetent. How can you pick people who are not competent? So that was a double-edged sword for the president, to be fair. We did not, when we were telling him to fire these people, we did not mention very specific people to tell him these people, for example, are corrupt. There are these cases before EACC, and they need to be removed from this particular, what was it? They need to be removed from their duty, whatever it is that they were doing, or we didn't come up with any cases of incompetency that we would see that they're running their, is it ministries badly? We didn't do that. We didn't do any of that, but we put the burden on the president to take care of that situation. So what he did, of course, he dismissed them, and then he brought back what he would want to tell you, according to him, were the competent people. And you saw the tribal card being thrown in very many constituencies. People already starting the Mtuwangu thing, and they're like, this person has to be brought back, and we want this number of seats. The tribal thing kicked in immediately. So again, my question would be, are we leaving the burden of interpreting the message to the president himself? And when he interprets it the way he understands it, again, we go back to blame him. What are we telling the country? What are we telling the president? What do we want? That for me is a very, very big question. And then when it comes to him rewarding his people, I don't think that rewarding loyalists is a new concept. It's not a unique concept to Kenya. We know that the currency in politics is not competency, but it's loyalty. So we should not be surprised about that. Only that probably we need to be fighting for. We don't want people who are incompetent. We don't want people who are corrupt on those seats. So Mizani, still I go back to what is our message to the president. If at all we keep sending the wrong signals to not only him, but to the country at large, then we will look like we don't know what we're agitating for. So So those are my thoughts today.
Thank you, Mariam. And I think you really coincide with what I asked earlier on. What are we fighting? Are we fighting bad politics? Are we fighting bad governance? Or are we fighting individuals? And what do we want out of this? Tony, I see your hand is up. Definitely you get a scoop on. Go ahead, Tony.
Just a quick one to Miriam. You know, loyalty is not a blind issue for a politician. It's not an open check. When Mwai Kibaki decided to change his government, he fired 6 of his most loyal friends. Matere Kereri was controller of State House, was sent home. Christopher Murungaro, Minister for State, was sent home. Mweraria, Minister at the Treasury, was sent home. John Gidongo, PS Governance, was sent home. Alfred Gitonga, his personal assistant, was sent home. Under the Moi regime, he arrested his right-hand man, Nicholas Biwott. And even through the Ukomada, Anguka was taken out. And if you go back even during Uhuru Kenyatta's time, his most loyal friend was the Minister Treasury of the Treasury, Henry Rotich, and he had him out. And including the deputy president himself, William Ruto, formed government with Uhuru, and Uhuru threw him out for Baba. So, Miriam, you can't come to this space and tell us fantasy. I don't know where you have read politics, but I read politics, and politics is the reverse of what you say. Politics is the issue of Brutus, who stabbed Julius Caesar. Politics is about stabbing your best friend. Please, come on, let's talk honestly on this space.
All right,
Wow.
the crossfire is getting fired up. Do you want us to give Mariam a right of reply, please, Mariam?
No, just very briefly, you know, what he said is obviously very accurate, that some people will always be the ones who will be sacrificed in this line of when it comes to taking out some people who are loyal. But Tony, you must agree that even during the Kibaki time, the people who still were reshuffled to other places, whether it's whether it's ambassadorial duties or whatever it is, the loyalties are still the loyal people are still kept in the system in one way or the other. It's only that at the moment, Ruto is going to have to sacrifice a few people. Out of the ones that he took out, he's going to bring a few of them, and then he's going to reshuffle them to a different place. And of course, award Kina ODM or Azimio or other seats. Some guys will have to be sacrificed. But the truth is, he has to retain some people based on the weight of whatever they bring to the table. That is for him, Tony. That's what I really think.
I agree, Miriam, but you don't bring Kindiki back to internal security. What you do, you send him to livestock, as Moi would have done. I'm agreeing with you, but what you do is you deflect the public mood.
But
you can even arrest your friend, and all I'm saying is Ruto looked us in the eye and brought back the people in the same way that he removed them. So there was no movement.
So Tony, that goes back to the question that I was asking earlier. Are we communicating clearly to the present? Because, for example,
if politics...
Mm-hmm.
Oh, is Mariam speaking? I can't hear her.
Yeah, I am speaking. Sorry.
She is on the mic.
Yeah. So Tony, the reason why I asked earlier whether we are communicating clearly is because you see someone like Kindiki, for example, there are people who are agitating on the ground that the guy was doing his job well. So what would be our reason for targeting him or Aden Duale specifically to say that these guys are not supposed to be back in the cabinet? Have we given a clear reason why we don't think that they need to be back there?
So Miriam, so that we don't do a to and fro, on the issue of Kindiki, the principle is well settled. It's called political responsibility. Already there has been a person who has been fired or resigned, the IG of police, by taking personal responsibility. But the concept of political responsibility is entrenched so that the head of any organization or ministry where things go south, that person is expected to vacate and take political responsibility. And all I'm saying is that if you do that, you are able to show the population that you are not going to, for example, allow in which the way demonstrations were being handled or maybe manhandled, the deaths and so forth that were there. I'm just simply saying that Ruto could have changed the conversation, but loyalty is not the number one consideration of reappointment to the cabinet. I'm just saying there are other considerations, including how the country is running.
All right, Tony, thank you for that. less than 2 years into leadership, one will wonder, why is President Ruto's house in disorder? Is he tone deaf, incompetent, or hostage to all politics? And that's why Kenyans are telling them enough is enough. Ruto must go. Nothing will change unless Ruto and his government resigns. The next president can appoint a competent cabinet, says Ruto must go. That is his handle on Twitter, or rather X. Give me a chance to talk. Please, this is an open mic session. You may request the mic and wait for your opportunity to contribute. Ndungu Wainaina says Kenya is still a political release phase of reorganization of state power. Ruto transcended Moi, Kibaki, and Uhuru. Art of disorder, trickery, occultism, and his political instruments. Occasionally, he appeared to go opposite direction to more efficiently reach his destination. We have Luisa Atonga who says, nimeona kuna mtu anasema twende na bag za mfu. Okay, fine. I don't know what that means, but thank you for that comment. Let's see what Wanjiro Gidiomi, thank you for joining us on the chat section, says, Tony says that we should stop being naive. The currency of politics is loyalty, not competence. But Ruto should be smart about how he is rewarding the loyalty, improve how the country is run. Definitely a different view on what we're discussing. Thank you for that remark. And sampling at some of your comments here, I will say Mr. GPS, who says, update civil society organization oppose President William Ruto nominees to cabinet, says they are considering challenging the reappointment of 6 members, citing unconstitutional return. Well, it's boiling na hapa ni kuanguka nayo. Back to you, Brief Scoop, as we welcome the new speakers on the queue.
Sure. Let's go with economist. I'm curious to hear from him. Baraza, you keep coming up and dropping, so when you come on, we'll let you speak. Economist just dropped. So let's see. Motomoto, go ahead. Just for, well, we did have a lady just speak, so let's hear somebody who's been here. Steve, you've been up there for a while. You want to go? And then after that, Tommy, and then Motomoto. Steve going once. Steve Nyanducha. All right. We'll move to Tommy, 27. All right. Baraza is here. We had called on you earlier, but you dropped. Go ahead, Baraza, and then Tommy.
All right. Can you hear me?
You're somewhat low, but we hear you.
Okay. What about now?
Rabble, your mic is so faint, and if as speakers we can't hear you audibly, the listeners will have a very hard time.
What about now?
Well, proceed, please.
All right. So, sorry, my phone was misbehaving today. So I was listening to the conversation, and I think there's a fundamental problem we are not discussing here, which is, personally, I am very happy with William Ruto. Before you throw rotten tomatoes at me, just hear me out. I'm very happy with him because of what Tony is calling mishandling of politics. Kenyan politics has, ideally, right? Ideally, politics is supposed to be about interest of the people. And so that's where ideological leanings come in. That's where you find parties that have different ideological stances because they have different ways they think they should serve the people. But at the end of the day, the politics is around how and why we should serve the people. In Kenya, that has never been the case. In Kenya, to be honest, politics is organized crime. These are crime families, right? It's like the Italian mob. These are crime families fighting for territory. So when we talk of a coalition, it's, the one Casa Nostra family has talked with another one. One controls Manhattan, the other one controls Harlem, and they're like, let's come together, let's pull our resources together, and let's handle this thing, right? This thing makes no sense. And the reason why I am very happy with Ruto is because he's mishandling the trickery of it. The thing he's mishandling is trickery. When we say he's mishandling politics, we are saying he has he's not able, he is either not able or he's not willing to trick us into believing he has our interests at heart. This exposes the lie that we've continued telling ourselves, that somehow we can concoct this system, this Kamau Wangengi system, into working for the people. We cannot. I'm sorry, we just can't. This conversation about
Again, we lost Rubble. Rubble seems to be having a very difficult time today. Tony, any quick ones from what Rubble has just presented? Then we can try and move back to him if he's there. Otherwise, we go to Tommy.
Well, you see, the point I agree with him is that Ruto is making mistakes, but I do not think he's making them by choice. Where I allowed the Gen Z movement and the protests that began ostensibly to say no to the 2024 finance bill is that by using the avenues allowed in the 2010 constitution to protest and picket, the people, sovereign as they are, began to shake the tree and began to tell Ruto, we don't like the way things are. So Ruto was caused. They say from a psychological point of view, behavior is caused. And therefore, to understand behavior, you must understand the reasons and the causes for such behavior. So I am saying that Ruto's carelessness and mistakes were occasioned by the protests that were generated by the displeasure of our citizens and the Generation Z who came out to voice it. And therefore, the remedy to the problem cannot be to window dress it. It must be to overhaul and to fix. And that is why the 2010 Constitution has in it not only just a Bill of Rights, but the express provision that the sovereign will resides with the people. So I just want to help the conversation that we are not as helpless as we were in 63, even in 92. Because there is a way where these protests have resulted in changes. They have resulted in changes because before you could not picket, you could not protest, you would have been detained without trial, you would have been arrested. And even today, when the police were trying to ban rallies, the courts have said that they have no power to do so. So what we are doing today is testing the 2010 Constitution for generations to come. That hold on, this is not going to be business as usual. And so Ruto is becoming the first president being tried by the people, not the political class. So the mistake we are making is saying, look, it's a political problem. I'm saying it's a people problem. The people are the ones agitated. And I think this Tuesday, they will make themselves known again of their displeasure.
All right, Tony. Briefscoop seems to be having a problem with most of the speakers, so we'll try as much as possible to have him engage. Briefscoop, can you hear me?
I hear you. I hear Tony, and I did hear the last speaker, thankfully. So yeah, we can proceed. So Tony says we have to overhaul, and I forget the second word you used. Overhaul, and Tony, help me out here.
And we cannot window dress the change. It has to be real because it is the employee, the sovereign is saying you're not governing me well. It's not the political class who are saying give me a bigger chair or a bigger cabinet or realign Odinga and me and you. It's the populace who are saying we don't like the way in which we are going in this direction. So you can't window dress, so you have to overhaul and you have to now tune the car and make the water drip from the exhaust pipe.
So what does that overhaul looks like is what I'm hoping we can discuss as well. So bear that in mind as you give your presentation. Let's give another chance to, okay, he dropped again. Let's give a chance to economist whom I had called earlier.
He's supposed to be next.
Who was that? Sorry. Oh, Tommy. That's right.
Thank you very much, guys, for this opportunity. I really appreciate. According to the question you had asked, my answer is yes. Ruto is recycling his cabinet. I think it was very clear. We had sent a message very, very clear. The first and the second demonstration, we asked him to fire the ministers, not to reshuffle. I can see 70%, like 70 to 75% of the ministries have been have just been back. There's Kindiki, Duale, Chirchir, Wahome, Tuya, Miano. We didn't ask Ruto to bring back the ministers back. We asked him to fire them. Reason being, the ministers are not giving him the clear information. They are not advising him accordingly. I can just say one thing. I had Kindiki. Actually, Kindiki should be in jail this minute. If it's actually facts, he should be in jail 100%. Reason being, the other day I heard him in a national TV telling people of Kenya that he gives advice to the police. He doesn't give any order. Meaning, he is the one who gave an advice to the IG and the entire police to shoot and kill. So this guy should not be, actually 100% not be back 100%. Angekuwa sahi amefuatwa, ako ndani, anahojiwa. And let me give this warning to the MPs wenye wamejifanya, wamehumble, wanatusikiza, wanatuback. Please make sure all the MPs wenye watamvet Kindiki and the so-called Duale, wenye watavetiwa, please give clear information kwa nini more than 50 people are dead. Give clear information for that, and maybe they come back. Number 3, tumekuwa humble sana since the president spoke to the Gen Zs. The religion people come to the Gen Zs and told them to tone down and listen to what president is going to give out. Listen, the outcome is this: bring you back people who we asked them to be fired. I wanted to give one of my view, if it's possible. Tukiendelea mbele kukiwa hivi, pia kanisa tutagoma kwenda kanisa. Hiyo ndo maoni yangu. Tutagoma kwenda kanisani ama kwenda msikiti ama kwenda anywhere. Tukae tu nyumbani. 100%. Sunday hatuendi popote. If it's Friday, if you're a Muslim, don't go anywhere. Just stay at home. Because we listen to these people. They give us advice. We ask them to give us advice. They give us advice. Wanatuambia to toe down, tusikize, tutulie, tusikize. Ile majibu inakuja ni aina hii. It's very wrong. I'm very much...
Kugoma kweli itatosha. Tommy, please wind down in 30 seconds.
Tutasikizwa. Kugoma tutasikizwa. 100% tutasikizwa. If that's what they want us to do. The last and not the least, I just want to tell all the Gen Zs, venye tumeamua Tuesday ni kutoka kuumria. We want to paralyze and shut down, meaning shout down ndo Ruto asikie, ajue what we said, we meant it. Cause amerudia kosa. Kosa sio kosa. We came down, akasema tungoje tumpe nafasi afanye consultations. What came back ni kurudia kosa. He brought back his friends, closest friends, sijui alimpatia nini, sijui alifanya naye nini, akaamua kuwarudisha. Na ni wauaji, wasaliti wa Kenya. Asante sana.
Thank you, Tommy. If no one wants to jump in to respond to that, I think we can move on to the next person. Rabo Rouser, you were about done. We'll give you 45 seconds to wind down.
All right. So sorry for that. My mic has issues today. Can you hear me?
Yes, not so loud, but we do hear you.
All right. So what I was saying is, what we are doing here, the entire conversation around competence, around who is competent, who is not, who is qualified, who is not, I feel like it's a moot conversation, because the structure, the thing, what we're doing here, we're trying to force a cow to swim like a fish, right? As I was saying before, this system that was set up this selfish criminal system that was set up by Jomo Kenyatta is who I was calling Kamau Wangengi for those who don't know, that was set up as, you know, a criminal system to benefit from the hard work of Kenyans, is the system we should be fighting, right? I promise you there is nothing you will do to Ruto to make him decide the 6 billion he spent during campaigns will not come back. I promise there is nothing you will do to him. He will continue being that way. When we say Ruto must go, it is the system he represents. And even if that system had the best cabinet secretaries in the world, the agenda would still be the same, right? So all I was saying was, you cannot force a cow to swim like a fish. There's a systemic problem here. And part of us not understanding this systemic problem is because our minds are always trying to look for a reference point. And that's where we go back to, you know, looking at Kibaki as if he was so good. To be honest, I don't think Kenya has ever had a good president. It hasn't. We missed out on Jaramogi and that was it. We've never had a good president. All the other presidents have been operating within this system that was built, this criminal system that was built by Jomo Kenyatta to use people's taxes to benefit themselves. Why on earth, 60 years after independence, are we still having the same conversation about kuondoa umaskini, ugonjwa na ujinga? Why are we still having that conversation? Why do we still not have a properly funded public education system? Why do we still not have a properly funded public healthcare system? It is because our politics are inherently rotten, no matter who is at the top, no matter who is the minister, no matter who is in the opposition, our politics are inherently rotten. And we have to have a conversation about how we dismantle those systems. When we talk of a revolution is not removing Ruto and putting Kalonzo. A revolution is breaking up this system, this rotten, very deeply, I'd call it liberal capitalism centered system, which connected to corruption, it now becomes, you know, a whole other thing. So what I was saying is, we need to start looking at these things systemically. I know every time people hear of a class war, they start saying, oh, let's not talk that. But I think we actually need to have a class war. There's a political class, and when I say political class, it's not just politicians. There's a class of politicians. There's a class of politicians and businessmen in this country whose entire way of operation is benefiting from policies in the government that punish Kenyans in favor of them, right? And looting of public coffers. If we are not going to have a discussion about that system, this entire conversation about who is competent, who is not, what minister is a doctor, what minister is not, makes no sense. As I was saying before I left, I was saying the Minister of Interior, Kindiki Kithure, was one of the best human rights law professors. Look at what he's doing. Look at what he stands for. It's not about competence, right? It's not about who has what degree. It's not about who learned what at school. It's about the system that they represent. And without dealing with that system, without dealing with the fact that in this finance bill that we were discussing, there's one thing I didn't see anybody talking about. We put taxes on importation of clinker because Ruto's friend owns all the clinker mines in Kenya. We put taxes on importation of steel because the same friend owns the biggest steel factory in Kenya. If we're not going to have those deeply systemic conversations about how our economy is inherently flawed, is deeply, deeply flawed and continues to entrench this system of inequality, there is nothing we are discussing. We might as well remove Ruto and put Kalonzo and continue crying.
Right.
Complete overhaul of the system. Go ahead, Mizani.
No, actually, Rabble, I love your passion. And to some extent, you raise the question that most of us are trying to address without addressing it, which is when we claim, let's go on the street and paralyze Nairobi CBD, whose business are you paralyzing? But then again, we don't want to have that talk, right? Tony, and then we can go to the other speakers.
Mizani, 10 seconds. Can I say something there?
I want to disagree with Rabbi Rouser in the most emphatic way. In fact, I've not disagreed with anyone on this space today more than I disagree with him. And the reason is politics and the evolution of politics is through games. There is nothing in politics that is static. In politics, people development because they move from the Stone Age to civilization, to women's rights, women can vote, to competitive politics like multi-party. In other words, it's you make a step forward. And what the Gen Z generation of 2024 have done is found what rabble rouser has been saying has been happening. But instead of rabble rousing, they have decided to try and shake the tree. And in so doing, they have fought a series of battles. They have lost some and they have won some. And when this war is over, we shall count the battles they won and the battles they lost. They had IG come and go, which means the Kenyans can remove an IG of police. I don't remember when we ever did that before. The finance bill of 2024 was defeated. Even though the appropriations was snuck in, there was a political defeat that presidents don't normally accept. Even now as we speak, members of parliament in the opposition who would have done what rabble rouser is saying, jump in order to make a deal with the devil, are scared of their constituents. So are telling Raila, if you take us there, we are finished. So to the extent that some may go, many others will not. Because the Gen Z protest, because the citizens' uprising is making some gains. And I do not want this forum to sound a discouraging note to the men and the women who are waking up every day to go to the streets to make their voices heard. To me, their voices matter. To me, their voices count. And it must be like in America when they said black votes matter or black lives matter. When you stand up, even in the Me Too movement, you raise those issues and you raise them again and you raise them again until you get to the mountaintop, until you look over, until you see the promised land. You cannot take hope away from a generation because our generation did not do it. So I want to tell the Gen Z generation to hope on and look at that mountaintop, and they will get to the promised land because they believe and they have the purpose and the motivation.
All right. I almost had a Martin Luther King moment here. But then again, who am I? Tony TG doing the most right here on the spaces as we look at recycled cabinet. Is Ruto tone deaf, competent, or hostage to old politics? That's the conversation you're raising. I am a fair man, so I will give Rabble another 20 seconds, Rabble. Please, we don't want to have a two back and forth. Just make your point and we can move forward to the next speakers. Rabble, please.
All right. So I hear what Tony is saying, and all I want to say is I'm not looking to discourage anyone. As a matter of fact, I'm a Gen Z myself. I have been in this fight. All I'm saying is we should not stop shaking up the tree. Let us continue shaking the tree. But for once, let's organize ourselves and cut it down and build a tree that works for us.
I agree the part of shaking the tree. The cutting is a problem because if this as a gentleman, and Asema Tingiza Miti was here, he will not agree with you, Rabo. You know that, right? Thank you. Let's go to the next speaker. We have Motomoto.
Hi, good morning, everyone. For me, my thoughts on all that's going on, I think that President Ruto seems to have been navigating things like a grasshopper, where he's been able to navigate many unknown territories that a lot of presidents that we've had before have never, experienced the way he's been able to navigate. However, I think with all that he was doing, he was not in sync with the rest of his team. So, it just showed failure of his organization because he's doing something else and his team is not in sync, or rather, the other people who serve him are not in sync with what he's doing. And then I also think I agree with Miriam's statement where she mentioned that we should be able to document our asks so that they're aware of what we would like to see. But from my personal observation is that with this current government, they've not been able to engage with the people. They are very arrogant and they lack exposure when it comes to international affairs. With that goes with diaspora. For instance, the Diaspora State Department, where they opened it up, they've not been able to really have that dialogue where we are all on the same page. Rather than them improving our lives, they're exporting our people from the country. Like they say, exporting, which is a bad word to describe our people. So that's just my thought process. I just think he's incompetent because he's not been able to improve our lives in whatever way within the last 2 years.
Thank you, Motomoto. By the way, we haven't really touched on this because we've been talking about the cabinet, but the cabinet even right now is not even half formed, right? It's a minimum of 14, and I think a maximum of 22. There's 11 named. I'm still not convinced that Raila Odinga is not going to be either he himself or very close generals of his are not going to be named in the next round of cabinet nominations. And I have a strong feeling that that is the reason why we only got what looks like half of the cabinet announcement. I don't know if, Tony, if you have any thoughts on that.
I'd actually asked, you the other day, we need to get one of these Azimio people to tell us what is happening behind the scenes. But what happened was that there was a PG meeting of the affiliate parties of Azimio, the major ones, and all of them voted not to board with William Ruto, with the exception of the ODM. The ODM party left open that window, and all the other affiliate members of Azimio said no. But since that time, ODM has been split internally, with at least two people going public. I think Governor of Siaya, James Orengo, and I think Ebakazi MP Babu Wino going no. But even up to now, nobody in ODM who's yes to boarding is going public to say yes, other than the statement made by Oburu Odinga. And why the president announced half a cabinet or not the full cabinet is because Odinga and his party have not fulfilled their part of giving the president their wish list. And that's because of an internal civil war in the Orange movement. And it is occasioned by this Generation Z movement and protest. And internally, I can tell you, even in his own home, where some of his family members have refused, this matter is become. In fact, I want to agree with Miriam about one thing about communication, because you see, as much as we are saying Ruto has failed, Odinga has been unable to make a decision one way or the other, which is the first time in his political career where he's shaken, because this matter can destroy not just his legacy, but the future political prospects of the ODM party. And I can tell you right now, they cannot publicly say their position. Privately, there is a civil war in the Orange Party.
Very intriguing, intriguing moves. But I think what I'm also hearing is, I'm still convinced that ODM will go it alone. What I'm also hearing is, do we care about what the politicians are doing and how they're looking after themselves? Mizani, you've been paying attention to the speakers. Do you want to jump in and call on? I think Chapsaron has been waiting for a while. Let's hear from Chapsaron.
Thank you, Mizani and the host. I have two things that I want, maybe with the help of Tony, maybe we can look at it. I think the starting point is where Rapol Rosa is saying that we started from the wrong perspective, in the sense that the 2010 constitution, its implementation actually started with the wrong people. Remember that 2010 constitution, its start of implementation started with Uhuru and Ruto, who were accused of serious crimes. So these guys are starting to what many would say that they are a child is born, the new constitution is born, and the people who is given this constitution to take care are the wrong people. So that is where the problem started from. And I think now the fact that Gen Z are coming in is that I don't know whether we are blaming Ruto or we are supposed to blame ourselves, that we gave these guys power at the wrong point. And the fact that we are having all these problems, I think, goes back to that 2010 constitution of who the people who were given to take care of this and implement this constitution, who they are. And that is the issue that I have. One of the things also that maybe that one can be clarified by Tony, whether that is where the problem comes from, because I think he has more of politics. One of the issues that I also add is the fact that if you look at all issues, even if we are saying, I don't know whether this is the second revolution or the second what, the first one, of course, is dead. Whether this one or the first one, the independence one, the people who are really fighters, the people who are really revolutionaries, including people like Tony, are not anywhere to be seen. I am not sure whether any of us will believe that Uhuru Jomo Kenyatta was a freedom fighter. He was a bystander. In any case, he married one of them. So I don't think he was. The people like Dedan Kimathi, they disappeared into nowhere. The real freedom fighters disappeared into nowhere. I don't know whether that is true. But even if you look at this 2010 constitution, the people who fought for it, the Odinga, Kitobu Imanyara, Paul Muite, Tony Kashoka, all of them, name them. They are nowhere to be seen. Ruto was among the people who opposed this constitution. He was saying it is 80% correct, 20% correct, and he's there. So even this one and that brings me to the second point. The point that we are saying, Gen Z, I'm not a Gen Z, but the point we are saying, Gen Z are partyless, leaderless, I don't know what less, they have so many lesses, which is wrong. Because even when we say now Ruto is either stone deaf or incompetent, I don't think Ruto is incompetent. It is what Baraza is saying. The issue is in the system. The system started with the wrong people, and that is where we are. Even Ruto, if we were to talk to Ruto now, who is he going to talk to among the Gen Z? No one. He came to space, and the only thing that the questions we were asking on that space are, you say this, you've not done this. You say this, you've not done this. You say this, you've not done this. We didn't have real issues. We did not have real issues. And that is why people like Raila, people like Alonso are finding space now because they represent a constituency. Even our agency, we don't know who represents them. So these guys are occupying that space because there is no leader in Gen Z. And I think it is a political gimmick to keep saying there is no leader in the fact that Gen Z don't have a leader. It really doesn't make sense. If there was a leader, then we could have a single unity of purpose that we can say this is the direction that we are taking. Otherwise, if we continue with that one, then you will realize that we are heading nowhere. Only that we are saying we are not trying to dissuade anybody. Of course, we've met some cases in terms of shaking the tree, as we would say, but I still see the main problem is the fact that the right people to implement the 2010 constitution are not there. Even somebody has given you the example of Kithure Kindiki, a very good guy. Only that when he enters into the wrong system, he becomes, he loses direction. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I can't help wondering if Chepsaron is saying that the problem with the 2010 constitution is the people that implemented it. My question to that then is, if that system is so easy to be to turn rotten because of the people that are implementing it, then is it really a good system? I contend that it's not. I contend that the 2010 Constitution is a copy-paste of the American Constitution, which is a constitution that was built to be unequal. And so we copy-pasted inequalities that are built in. And I don't see how a document that was copy-pasted from an unequal system, deliberately made so, can serve as Kenyans. I think that's where it begins. I think we need to start with another constitution. I think we need to overhaul the whole system, restart again from scratch with a system, a brand new system of us Kenyans talking with each other and coming up with a system that is resonant to us as Kenyans, to us as Africans. I contend we should get rid of the presidency altogether, go back to a system of that is akin to the old councils of elders, maybe give it a modern sort of look and feel, an executive leadership council. And I think we also confuse democracy with elections. And I don't know that elections necessarily give us democracy. Tony, I see you want to jump in here. You can answer both my question and Chepsaron's.
Yeah, Chepsaron was very exciting intellectually. Let me say this, that all movements worldwide, from the Gandhi revolution when India was led by Mahatma Gandhi, to the civil rights movement, even the catalyst to the Second World War, are all driven by the economy. The economy is the catalyst for change. Where people are wrong about what's going on is they are looking at the 2010 Constitution as the solution. The 2010 Constitution is simply a highway that has been built, the Thika superhighway. But the people who have to move from Thika to Nairobi are the people of Kenya. And all I'm saying is that the economy is what triggered the high cost of living. And the high cost of living has been exacerbated by high taxation. And the government is saying that they're taxing us more because we owe debt that they must pay. But the public is seeing that they are borrowing more and more to feed their opulence. What triggered the JNZ movement was the Sudis and the Mukomens of this world exuding opulence when everybody else could not live hand to mouth, was living hand to mouth. It was driven by an economic trigger of a cost of living crisis that was continuously built upon by health taxation, housing levy, fuel levy. Everything government was taking was up, up, and up, and the Kenyan person was not getting or seeing where that money was going. So let us remember that the 2010 Constitution, imperfect as it is a bit like the human soul. It's imperfect, but trying to go to heaven. The 2010 Constitution is imperfect, but the people are not imperfect. The people are using the 2010 Constitution to gain what we could not have gained in 1967 or 1990. And where I want to correct Briscoe is as long as those gains are incremental, they will never be perfect. But as long as they're incremental, they are beneficial to succeeding generations. And so this economic stimulus forced this generation to bring to question the 2010 finance bill. And in so doing, in rattling that tree, shaking that tree, other bad apples fell. And when they fell, the Gen Z then felt, hold on, what about corruption? What about this bloated government of 47 counties when we could have 8 or 7 counties? Like the original, if we could reduce government, if we could reduce corruption, if we could do this, then we'd have a leaner, efficient government. And so then they began to say, look, if we are governed better, less waste, then we would be able to have a difference. Why am I raising these issues? I'm raising these issues because the dissatisfaction with Ruto's cabinet, the disaster of Ruto's cabinet, is because it has not come to allay the fears of economic downfall. It has not come to address the cost of living ya kila siku ya kila mtu wa Kenya akiamka kama anajiweza na kama anaweza kukaa kwa maisha akiwa anasikia yeye ni Mkenya.
Thank you for that, Tony. Nicholas, let's hear from you. Nicholas Gwadi.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Go ahead.
Okay.
You muted your mic, Nicholas.
Okay, it's on. It's on again. Let me start by saying that I'm very much impressed with the kind of conversation I'm getting in this space. At least we are composed and we are a bit away from the fury and the rage that we had previously. And you know, when you are off a lot of anger, you can now discuss soberly. And I also feel that we really need a conversation, as Brief Scoop have said, about the structures, the policies, and the politics style of this country. I'm in the opinion also that we should now stop fighting personalities and fight the wrong political system that has been in existence from time ever. And let me give a good example of success about stopping to fight the person and fighting the system. You see, Raila Odinga and his team that successfully repealed Section 2A at our age stopped fighting Moi and fought the constitution that brought in the tyranny that Moi was riding upon. So after they got the success from that, they let Moi compete as any other president will compete in general elections and win his 2 terms and then called it a day and signed and retired and went. Were it not for that, were it not that they stopped focusing on the person and focused on the system, maybe you could have had Moi rule for his whole life the way Kenyatta did. And people are saying that Kibaki would have been, was the best president. I agree with a speaker who said that he has never seen the best president here in Kenya. I've never also seen since I was born, about 30 years. Because Kibaki's government was a government that only became successful in the second term, where they were brought together by the circumstances of the compromise outcome of 2007 election, and then he had a government that was self-checking itself. We had ODM and PNU making the government where they don't trust one another and they are counter-checking one another. And that is the only scenario in Kenya where we have had genuine firing of CSS by then ministers based on whatever they have done. Because pressure could come from any system of accountability within the government itself. That's why the second term of Kibaki looked successful. At least we could count some things about it. So basically, everything calls upon us to reflect on our structures of governance. And that is a conversation we have to start and we have to own as millennials and the Gen Zs. Let us now stop being emotional. Let us now stop being complainers. We have complained a lot. We might see Ruto, but then what happens? If he resigns, yes. If he vacates office, if we successfully oust him out of power, which can happen. I believe that can happen. If we push hard, it can happen. But then if the next person finds the same rotten system, then we are doomed. We are again going back to call him out. And then what happens in the future? It's a cyclonic kind of a ring, whereby every time we are complaining about the leader. Because human is human. Somebody have said that Kindiki was a professor, was the most competent, but he found the bad system, he found corruption going on, he found looting spree, he found borrowing and stealing. He joined the party. He has become the most incompetent, that Minister of Interior and Security. So that's it. Ruto found the same. In less than 2 years, he has borrowed 1.2 trillion, which he cannot account for. We have the Auditor General Office, but still he wants to form a commission to inquire about the debts that he borrowed. It is the system. There's too much freedom about this Constitution 2010. And I also agree with the speaker who have said that we must start a conversation that will now relook into the Constitution 2010 itself. Me personally, I really don't want this Constitution in 10. I want it repealed. I want it. The next conversation should be, it's not even important to be who takes over, who becomes the president, whether to leaves. But I want a system. I want governance. I want policies. I want a constitution that spells out things candidly and precisely, so that we have everything on check. And then our duty as this generation who have started this, we'll be doing the social audit and making sure that accountability is looked up. If we have to go to streets and anything, I've been going to sleepless Tuesdays on the street. This Tuesday also coming Tuesday, I'm traveling to Nairobi doing the street. But I don't want to fight a war that will meet a dead end. I want to fight a war that shall win something for me and my generation to come. Because we have...
Nicholas, maybe you got a call because you got interrupted. But if you can hear me, 30 seconds to wind down. If not, we move on. All right, we don't hear Nicholas. Diamond.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Diamond. Please go ahead. We hear you.
Okay, thank you. So I think for me, I'm disappointed to say the least, because I really didn't expect the president to hire back his cabinet. In fact, this is not even a hire back. It's not even a reshuffle. He just copy pasted whatever he had before. I am actually thinking for the positions that he did not, that he changed. For example, Machogu in education, I think he sent him a message and asked him, look, if I don't give you this ministry, who else do you want to run the ministry? And Machogu just gave him the name for his deputy. In the agriculture ministry, he just sent what do you call him? Mithika Linturi a message and asked him, look, Mithika, I might not give you back this ministry, but who do you want to take it up? And Mithika said, look, just take my PA. He went ahead to the transport ministry and told Murkomen, look, boss, things are not very good. Your public image is not very good. So who else do you think will run this ministry? And Murkomen told him, look, give it to Chirchir. And that's what he continued doing in all other ministries. So in fact, he said he consulted widely. And actually that meant asking Machogu who will take over from him. I don't know how wide that is. He actually used a long statement. He read it for almost 7 minutes, 8 minutes, telling us how he's been listening for the last 1 month, explaining to us how Kenyans have spoken loudly, and telling everybody in the world that he with his government is a listening government. Just to end up saying the interior ministry will be taken up by Kindiki. In fact, I listened to it almost twice. I thought, look, did I even hear it clearly? In fact, Kindiki was the first name that came out. I was enraged. Why? Because look, this is the same cabinet secretary who's allowed 50 Kenyans to die in the streets for bullets and all these other issues around policing. It's the same cabinet secretary that's been abducting Kenyans left, right, and center. In fact, when you speak in these spaces today, you don't know which time you will be picked. They pick them at 3 a.m., they pick them at 4 a.m. Worse than criminals. And we have an inherent governance system in this country that actually the poor are the ones who suffer the most. All these politicians, most of them have cases in court running into millions and millions and sometimes even billions in terms of corruption cases. But for them, they just use they sometimes even don't they sometimes don't even have to sleep in police cells. But a normal Kenyan, a small guy in the village, will steal two eggs and he'll be given 10 years in prison. Not even 10 years, he'll be given a 2 million bond or a 10 million bond. We have an
30
inherent
seconds,
governance
please,
system.
Diamond, to wind down.
Okay, that's too short though. But yeah, so I'm saying the first thing is I don't think the president listens. I don't think he's ever listened to anyone and he's not ready to listen to Kenyans. Another problem with our 2010 constitution that we must look at as a country is all these posts and loopholes that we created. It's becoming too expensive to run it, and there are far too many loopholes that government officials are looting left, right, and center. We need to collect every single coin that's been lost since 2017 or since 2013. That's the only way forward. But hey, let's meet in the streets.
Asante Sana Diamond, we need to find every penny since 2013. I think it goes back even further than that, right? Really, to the 80s. Xerox. Xerox going once. Is Xerox still on the speaker panel? Okay, I don't see Xerox. Richard.
Thank you, Brief Scoop. Sorry, I actually wanted to reply to something that Tony had rebutted on what I'd say. I know it's a bit stale, but I'll just put it by saying these quick points before I make my final point and drop off. What I'd actually want to say is the same issues you're grappling right now are the same issues we grapple at independence. Because right now we are questioning, is county governments working for us, or is national government working for us? These are the same questions we actually had back then. And I think we let the elite have a discussion on our behalf. Then you had all these guys that mentioned the tomboyers and decide our future, because all of us cannot lead ourselves in their divisions and how they looked at this country. And we are right here right now. And I think respectfully so, one thing that Tony does not understand is the political class that has got a cleavage to the old system is what we do not want as a people. Because the last time he was on a space, he said, I'm happy Raila Odinga has not done these. And right now he's talking about ODM being split. And we called these out and said, let's not put faith into these guys. Right? If Tony believes that Kalonzo and Azimio, if they don't join or not join with government, there is hopes there. I mean, that's why we are saying people do not understand what Gen Z is actually asking. We do not care of what political divides people are actually in. What we are looking forward to as we are shaking this tree, if it will shake off Raila Odinga, thank him for his service, for what he did for this country, move him aside, and let's keep moving. Because I agree with the Rabble on what he was actually saying, that we have deep issues. Yes, we cannot fight all these issues at a time. We'll just keep shaking the tree and fighting the battles we have in front of us, and hope probably in the next years to come, because you don't win one way in one day unless you've hit rock bottom, like Sri Lanka didn't. They said enough is enough, and they did what they did. We probably almost getting there when the finance bill came up and triggered us. But again, looking forward, the systems we've had in the old regime with the new constitution did not help us at all. Because take an example of Tim Berners-Lee. He created the web. He never knew that guys would build websites and build commercial businesses online. He just built the system. He never envisioned on how that system would be implemented. The father of AI went ahead and built that technology back then, but the use cases we have right now are a bit different. So the old guys and the old folk who are still probably imagining that there is something good that can come out of leaders we actually had in the times past, I fundamentally believe somebody like Kalonzo is a clean man, I know, yes, to a great degree of what we know in the public domain. But I'm sorry to say, all these guys would never give us solutions, because one or the other, they'd want to balance regional politics here and there. We actually need a new thinking. That is a very radical statement to say. Napoleon tried, having a revolution wherever it led France to. Okay, we do not know, but I fundamentally believe that the old thugs and gatekeepers of politics would never help us moving forward, including Ruto. And that's why he does not get it. He does not understand it. And that's why he keeps bringing cabinet back that we said. To Mariam's question as I conclude, she said, did we give a clear message to the president? Yes, we said fire the entire cabinet, do not bring them back. That was very clear. We've been giving very clear messages and saying we want accountability throughout all your ministries. We said instead of you after you fire the CSs, go to the PSs and parastatals, remove all these people. Let's have a sense of fresh air. People in constitutional offices, but still want to think the old way. The DPPs, all these other commissions, still waiting and hoping the president should direct them or not they're supposed to when they have mandate in the constitution. So for me, I'm so sorry to say, if anyone expects the political class who have any alienation to the old system, that because we have a new constitution, they're going to change this country, I am so sorry to say, and I would want to be convinced otherwise, these guys would never help us with anything. So viva to the Gen Zs. Let's keep rattling this tree. But again, as people have said, let's be organized in terms of how we fight this battle going forward, because where we are headed, we are creating a future for ourselves, not for the old people. In the next 50 years, most guys who are 50, they'll not be here, would be here. So let's structure and reset on how we'd want to envisage governance going forward. If that will mean a new constitution or something else, by all means, let's go there. But the old people, with all their might, prowess, power, and whatever they've contributed, I think it's enough time. Let these guys go home. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Tony, go ahead.
Sometimes when you listen to somebody who is not very intelligent, you can forgive them. Because this young man who is talking is older today than he was yesterday. And next week, he'll be a week older than he was last week. And next year, he'll be a year older. He's talking as though he owns this generation, or whether youth is something that God has given him to carry in his pocket. Many of us have done our part. when we were young, we were in the struggle. He may not know that I was jailed at the age of 23, committed prison, fighting for freedom. So don't tell me about credentials or fighting for freedom. I know them well. But let me also tell you, don't count your votes before they are cast. Don't think that this country is going to count one group of votes. This country is going to count an amalgamation of votes. The Jay-Z may contribute, and I hope they do, a large part of those votes, but they're not the only votes that will be counted. And let me be very clear to you, when you talk to people in such a condescending manner, that people who do not, I don't know, wear the label Jay-Z don't care about Kenya. I am not Raila Odinga. I'm not Kalonzo Musyoka. My name is Tony Gashoka. You go and walk your footsteps and stop pointing fingers at men and women you do not know. You don't know me and I don't know you. I've come to this forum to say that this country is moving in the right direction. I don't need your permission to speak my mind. After all, opinion is free and facts are sacred. But do not have this condescending view that only you and me alone are going to change Kenya. Those are the words of Ruto. That's what he was saying. We, the hustlers, we are the ones who are going to change Kenya. You are speaking like Ruto. You are acting like Ruto. Democracy is about carrying everyone along. It's about winning together. It's not about winning alone. So your 15 minutes are up. I'm sure it's been very nice to talk at Tony Gashoka on my spaces. But let's look at each other's credentials in 20, 30 years. Let's see what you've done and what I've done.
So I don't want this to be a back and forth, and I don't think that it really...
But can you not allow him to raise my name? He doesn't know me.
Oh, sure. All I was saying is I will not, Richard, I will not be giving you a right of reply simply because I think you've spoken and Tony has replied on this occasion, and we do need to move forward. So I will allow Nicholas.
Yes,
Sorry?
please. You lost me and I didn't wind up. Oh, thank
Yes,
you. Thank you.
just finish up, Nicholas, 30 seconds.
So I was coming to the problem that we are with right now with Ruto. Ruto is still in that cocoon of the bad political system that has been there. And that's why someone has said it correctly, that instead of firing the CSS the way we demanded and replacing with people who would bring in image of integrity, he's still battling between listening to the Gen Z and the millennials demand and balancing the political divide and looking at his 2027 future political analysis, things like that. Because the worst thing about our political system is that we are tribally alienated. That is the biggest problem. We are tribally alienated. That's why you could see somebody has been given a job. A group of youth are going to celebrate that he has been given as she has been nominated as yes. The other time when Linturi.
All right, we've lost Nicholas again. So let's keep going. Anthony, please go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Mizani. There's one thing I would love to bring about before I even do my submission. Is I think the Gen Z should come to this realization. Yes, they may have started the agitation this year, and they may have given it the name the Gen Z, but they need to learn from history that we have the guy, Tony Gashoka, we have the late Wangari Maathai, we have the Shikukus, who started this journey of writing the Constitution, the 2010 Constitution, and they are privileged that they will be the ones to birth it. I think that's what they are. Those are the two things we need to connect. That this 2010 Constitution was written by a different generation, so that they get to enjoy the freedoms that Gashoka did not enjoy. I think I've passed my point, but let me go to my submission. The question is, Ruto, whether he's tone deaf, incompetent, hostage, or hostage to old politics. And I would want Tony to help me on this one. I don't believe Ruto is incompetent. I believe Ruto, and I don't think he's tone deaf. He couldn't have ascended to that point if he doesn't have a good listening ear. I think Ruto is held hostage. He's held hostage to several things. He's held hostage by his ambition, his friends, the 2010 Constitution, and this new generation. of thinkers. And I'll go one by one. His ambition. Ruto, in the words of Millie Ojiambo, when Millie Ojiambo interviewed Ruto, he said that when Ruto walked into my office, I knew he harbored the ambition to be president. So throughout Ruto's political journey, he went forming alliances all the way from 1992. That's why I say he's held hostage by his friend. Number two, where his friends come in. So in that journey, he met Chirchir, he met Duale, he met this lawyer Kindiki, he met Akina Sudi somewhere in the back alleys, and the Murkomens. So once they started crafting this government, promises were made. You know, a pact was made. Let me say, like an oath. They took an oath that if we get you to that office, these are our irreducible minimums. And how do you get to realize this? When when KK, the URP, were crafting the cabinet, it is said Kindiki was to be the vice president. But somehow, Gachagua got the position. So Kindiki bolted out. In fact, it is said he went home and Ruto had to go and really convince him to come back. And hence he was given the second most powerful position, which is a seat he is actually occupying. That's how his friends are holding him. So there's no way Ruto will fire Kindiki or Duale. We are dreaming if we think so. Or Alice Wahome. Why? Why? Because that promise was made years before this position was held. Now, how is Ruto held hostage by the Constitution? We must realize this, and Tony, I think, will help me on this, that a constitution is only as good as the people tasked to implement it. If you give the perfect constitution to bad people, it will still remain a bad constitution because the implementers are bad. So the old constitution serves the interests of Ruto. Why? Because Ruto is a product of the old constitution. Okay, but he has to abide by the new constitution. So that's how the constitution is holding him hostage. The other group of
to that point,
yeah.
I would pose it to you this question, which is, so are we saying then, for example, in the United States, because you know that is a country that functions at least for its people, for the American people, the United States functions. Are we saying then that everyone, every single president in the United States and everyone in government are principled and ethical? Because I can tell you with certainty they are not. So it's big, and I argue that it's because of the system in place that the country functions for the citizens.
I was actually going to quote I was actually going to allude to the U.S. Constitution. Let me tell you, the U.S. Constitution, that's the oldest democracy. And I'll give an example. When the, what is it called? The Gettysburg speech, that all humans are created equal. Okay? But you find, even if they realize that all people are equal regardless of color and where they come from, to date, the Black Americans are still fighting to exercise that right that is bestowed to them in the Constitution. So the implementation of a Constitution is a continuous fight. Why is it a continuous fight? Because a Constitution is implemented by different generations. Okay? That is why Barack Obama, people cried. Because most people saw the Constitution having achieved a milestone, that we are all equal, that now we have a Black president. But we must not forget, during Barack Obama's time, BLM was born, Black Lives Matter. Why? Because they still felt, after we have a Black president, we are still oppressed the same way Martin Luther was. Have I answered your question on that? So a constitution is implemented by different generations. So there'll always be a fight. Even after this, we shall still not, we can't keep on changing the constitution. We just keep on amending it to suit and perfecting it. I hope I've answered your question, and citing the example of Barack Obama and the BLM movement.
You have that
Now,
and you said you know the all men are created equal, which was written by a slave right?
Yeah.
The irony of that. So clearly a very imperfect man, more than imperfect, an evil man. He was a slave owner, the person who wrote that, that all men are created equal, right?
But his ideals were correct. He was a slave owner, but the ideals that all men are equal under God was a good idea.
All right. Please
You
wind
must
down.
give him
Correct.
that.
Please wind down. 30
Okay.
seconds.
Oh, okay. Now, where my last contribution is the new wave. There is a generation that is in. We are in now. The old constitution, and I would say we're in a transitional period because the old constitution is giving way to the new constitution, and the people who are buying the new constitution are these Gen Zs and the millennials and the alphas. In what way? They are saying equivocally that we are tribeless, leaderless. But we, the Rutos and the Duales, are still holding on to tribe. That is why when we are implementing cabinet positions, we go back to the tribal card, that we must maintain regional balance. And that is the disconnect. Because the Gen Zs are saying, I am a lawyer, but I am not saying a lawyer must be in cabinet. I'm saying the competent person must be in cabinet. Why are they saying this? Because most Gen Zs do not even care about their tribe. They don't even talk their native language. So that's how the president today is hostage. He's hostage to all those things. And I think he's also hostage to global economics. So he's in a very bad place. And I don't know how will we go out from it. So those are my submissions.
Thank you, Tony. Mizani, welcome back. You had dropped. Let's go to Redemptor, George, and Xerox in that order.
Thank you very much. It is a privilege for me to be given the mic. I think I am in the presence of great Kenyans. I'll try to stick to the topic, but I've had all these conversations for the last 2 hours, so it will interfere with my thought process. Is the president tone deaf? I'm here for self-preservations. I like to make this disclaimer. I'm here kama mwandishi, mtetezi, mzazi na mwananchi, and a very active citizens. So that gives me permission to come and make submissions in these platforms. As a mzazi, I am tone deaf to small children. I don't even hear them talk. I believe our president is tone deaf to human rights. And I think sometimes people are born that way. There are people who are just not aware. And so what has happened in Kenya today, the Gen Zs are not just shaking the tree and bad fruits coming out. I think they will uproot this tree because they have the numbers. There has been weaponization of poverty in this country. And we used to have this joke that one day the poor will come out and eat the rich people because the rich people will be so poor. The idea that I'm seeing the divide of when the Gen Zs are, the ones who are not woke will come and talk down on the older generation just by virtue of the age and assume you don't know anything about liberating this country. And I've gone to platforms and my mic has been switched off because I've said some of us carry scars from trying to speak truth to power. I am saying I'm privileged to be in front of Tony Gashoka because when we were young, we used to tune in to our radio stations. I think it was Kiss that came with that kind of openness and listen to a talk show called Crossfire. And they would argue with the late Mutula Kilonzo Jr., Senior, not debate about a just society and governance and the laws of the land. And that's where people started, the older generation, the ones that are being referred to as they don't know what's going on in Kenya. And the reason I'm bringing this is not just to give Tony his flowers, but to also say the reason why this revolution is so organic is because of the information era. I listened to Miriam speak, and I've listened to somebody else make submission, and they've said the Ministry of the Interior Ministry is the most powerful ministry. That scares me. Why is it powerful? It's supposed to be the ministry or the docket that protects Kenyans. But if we are honest with ourselves, the reason why some of these dockets are superior is because of entrepreneurship. And so when Miriam spoke, I think we are attacking personalities. We are not attacking the office. The reason why people end up being attacked and it feels like it's personal is because they make it personal. I have followed the words of the Minister for Interior as a human rights defender, documenting massacres in this country, and he makes it personal. He does not make it about the value of human life. And so what is going to happen now? We can come here and say these young people are headless, they are leaderless, they are clueless. But the truth is they have one agenda and one agenda only, most of them. It is to survive. Of course, people have taken advantage of them, of the movement. But others, we've come alive because we are losing our sanity at the rate of which they used to be called extrajudicial killings, and now I'm told they are called summary executions, where the young people are being told you have no right to live. Because if you deny me the opportunity to speak up and say, look, you have pushed us to the corner and now we are coming, we are informed, we know our rights. I've heard somebody saying they don't want the constitution, and that's ignorance because they did not experience the Lancaster constitution in terms of being held hostage by the two old politics. The two old politics are also tone deaf to human rights violations. So what's the scorecard for me for Kindiki as a CS? He came on a national TV where people tune in, over 10 million Kenyans tune in, and his tone when he was talking about how many people have died. When you come and downplay what an organization mandated by the government to give us a body count, and you give a different, and you downplay numbers. So as we speak, we have how many unresolved, no justice, no reparation, no chances of reparation justice, a gas explosion, the Njaa revolution protests that were hijacked by the political class again, the massacre in Shakahola, which was weaponization of religion, which is the same way weaponization of religion was used to get the numbers. So my thoughts are all over the place. Let's not defend people because they are our own people. Let's give scorecards based on, if you're an expert of the law, go to the docket of law and let's give these people a scorecard. If it's the docket of economics, do that. My specialities is the human, it's the emotions, it's the life, it's the young generation. So when I come here screaming and say, stop killing our children, is because I have fought for the rights of others, and now my children are out there in the streets, and I want them to have a chance to live. So every time I see a missing person, every time I see a floating body, I say, these people are tone deaf to what the Constitution stands for. The fact that someone can go on TV and say, I am canceling protests, and it takes a very brave young woman who is now the president of the Law Society to come and say, we are taking you to court. What do we see next? Anybody who is speaking. That's why I gave a disclaimer. We have a poster with people like Kithure Kibwana as the most wanted criminals, like the people who are the reason why this protest, or not protest, this revolution, I'll call it its right name, because you cannot kill a revolution. You can downplay it. You can say, well, it lost meaning. It lost the opportunity. The reason is what you don't know, many Kenyans don't know, is what does not bother them. What does not affect them, they don't bother around. So people don't know about the human rights violations that are in this country. So we have social justice centers across the country. When you see someone like Wanjira come on TV and talk with so much passion, and then she's told she's disrespecting the president, is because she's dealing on a daily basis with the violation of rights of the people in Mathare, where they said, we are going to demolish 30 meters. And what did they do? They went 100 meters. Do you know what the difference of those 60 meters does? It just makes our whole population homeless. So we are not just going to have a revolution. All of us are going to humble ourselves and say we've been tone deaf to the realities of our country because we are busy thinking they are clueless. Some of them, yes, will come and talk to you and you'll wonder what's wrong with you because they were not parented. Some of them, it's because of how we treated them, how we were treated, and how we spoke to them. I'll finish. Sorry, I've taken more than my 3 minutes. I'll finish with this. I spoke to a gentleman who told me, how can those young people talk to the president like that? And I said, how did they talk to the president? And he said, no, it's not an abuse because of the words they said. It's how they said it. And I asked him, how have the political class been talking to each other for the last 10 years? In fact, these young people are speaking with so much decorum. They are using the right words. What are the most learned people when they come on TV and people are weeping. So you're leaving pockets and pockets of angry people. So when you come here and say, let's tone it down, now the anger is less, the rage is less, it just increased. Because now people in Kware are angry. People in Nyeri, I know something happened in Nyeri, people in Rongai. So let's not just focus on the economics of our politics. These two political divides, they always leave their people behind. I said I followed 27 post-election violence, what happened, and Raila went to a house of someone who had lost their child and said, I will make sure you're compensated. Now another parent is watching him. So sorry, I get a bit too worked up. I can talk politics, but I think I'm in the presence of great people. I'm just saying these young people have a cause. We are counting on them. We don't have their energy. We don't even have their skills. So every time people come here and say they have no strategy or the president has strategy, what he is a good schemer. He's not a good strategist, because
kindly
when you have
land. We really need to start closing down. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Redemptor. It was a struggle to jump in because you were making great points. Thank you. Mizani, over to you. I think I had called on George and Xerox and Professor Ombati.
Yeah, let's have George coming in. George, do you mind 3 minutes? Kindly proceed.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Mizani and Brief Scoop. I'm going to preface by saying I am the most unpopular person throughout this movement, because I came up with two conditions that the Gen Zs have to adhere to if they want to achieve anything. And those conditions were, they have to be organized and they have to be disciplined. And now I'm a little hesitant listening to the good man, Tony Gachoka, barrage the guy and say that he is irredeemably ignorant. And I truly fall into that category. But what I know for sure is this: I know opportunities when I see them. And the opportunity that the Gen Zs did have were the opening of the window for them to achieve greater things for the future generation by changing the articles of the Constitution that are no longer working for us. And even before there was any foot soldier on the streets, I had said we need to go in there and change the setup of the counties and reduce the governors to reflect 8 provinces. And because now we are a technological a village where most of the services are being rendered online, we do not need 200, 400 something MPs. We just need an MP from each district of the old days, 47 districts. And then we need the upper house of the senators, just 2 senators from each province. So 16 senators, 8 governors, 47 members of the lower house. And then we multiply by 10 the number of councillors, because they are the people who are serving the people in their wards. And then we take the budget from lawmakers, because it's not their job to handle money. Their job is to make laws, and give that money to the councillors in the mashinani. And it looks like even Tony Gachoka alluded to that earlier on today. And we have brought here Dr. Ekuru and another gentleman called Araha Adum. They were actually the people on the table when they were drafting the new constitution in 2010. We have all these people we can reach out to reshape the direction that we need our country to go. And I would really, truly want to hear what somebody with a great mind like Tony Gachoka has to say about making the movement about using Article 257 to change the constitution. Because, I mean, we have millions of people lining up to go demonstrate? How about those millions of people come up with picking up signatures so that we can force the IEBC to accept our motion to change the constitution? And the reason I became unpopular is because I was asking, why would you want to eliminate the president when he is the only one with the power to reconstitute IEBC? And why would you want the members of parliament to be sent home when they would be the ones working on the amendments of the constitution that you want to envision for the 21st century? And so we have said so many things and a lot of emotions have been poured. But when we have great people coming on board, and I made a video the other day, I said, the people you need to make meaningful gains, they are already in the executive. They are already in the judiciary. They are already in the legislature. Find those people, align with them, and then rally around with them to make the meaningful change that you need. Because if this movement focused solely on eliminating wasteful possessions in the county devolution system and eliminating through the constitution useless possessions of women rep and gay people reps and disabled people reps and one-eyed people reps, and minimizing the number of ministries, whatever you call these days, CSs, to a maximum of 14 inside the constitution, so that you are constraining the president to abide by a mean and lean budget, that which is what caused the uproar, because the original complaint was you were complaining about wastefulness in government. The only tool that could have handled all those things in one sweep would have been the movement like the one of the BBI to change the constitution to fit and eliminate those things that we do not want. And I would want to hear people who have better minds than mine tell me, why are we hesitant to approach the repeal of the constitution, the amendments of those articles, so that we can empower the next generation of people to be in control of both the government, the size of the government, and the expenditure?
Thank you for that.
And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for that, George. Professor Umbati dropped. Unfortunately, we do have to close the space for now. We've come to the end. We are really out of time. I know the conversation is not over. Please join Mizani's space tomorrow. It's up there on the Jumbotron. It's at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. It will be discussing some of these things. It's focused on corruption, retooling, integrity, and accountability. We will continue these conversations. We'll have another space again. We'll have additional spaces, not just another space. We'll have additional spaces throughout the week, either hosted by myself, Briscoe, or Mizani, and as always, having discussions with Tony Gashoka and Wanjiro, who was in the audience today because she is otherwise engaged. So please, please, please follow us, follow each other, and we'll continue the discussions. I apologize to everybody. I know it is just never enough time. There's so much to talk about. There's so much that we have to accomplish as Kenyans. But unfortunately, we do have to get closing remarks from Tony and then Mizani and then call it a night. Tony.
I just want to echo some things that George has said. There is a way through the Constitution for a people-led constitutional amendment that does not have to go to Parliament. And that is what Dr. Ekuru Akot had done with Punguza Mizigo, that if you are able to garner a question, 1 million votes for a question, the people of Kenya can sign 1 million of them, a constitutional amendment initiative that can then be approved by the IBEC and can go and garner the votes for a constitutional amendment. There is an avenue, there is the architecture in the 2010 constitution for a people-led constitutional amendment that does not require parliament, but that requires 1 million signatures, but does require the IBEC. Somebody had asked me earlier, and I think it was a brief scoop or was Mizani, about, I talked about the overhaul. And he was saying, okay, then after this overhaul, then what do you see? And George came and began to answer some of those questions, because the overhaul is really the cost of our expenditure as a country through the government. And much of the expenditure is a public wage bill, which then forces government to be punitive to the country, to pay taxation, to pay for this over-bloated government. And this over-bloated government, in a large part, is the 47 counties, which really should actually be 7. They were originally 8, but Nairobi should actually be a ministry under the national government, just like Washington, D.C. is under, in the U.S., is under the federal government. And Kenya can actually reduce its burden by reducing the counties to 7. It can also do away with the women rep and such positions, including the MCAs in the county governments, are a very big drain to the exchequer, as well as the over-bloated public service. These issues of expenditure added together with the issues of corruption, because the problem of expenditure in counties and in the central government are only there because people want to be in counties, want to be in the government, central government, to loot, because we live in a country where there is budgeted corruption. And therefore, if you are trying to remove these people from the counties and from central government, you are removing their way to eat. And therefore, the problem is actually a twin problem. It is overemployment and over-resourced counties and national government, but it is also the means upon which they loot us. So if we were able to deal with both, we would be able to deal heavily with much of the expenditure of government. Now, the overhaul that the Gen Z generation have begun by defeating the Finance Bill 2024 was to slam the brakes on government's appetite to tax them beyond their own resistance. They had already begun to tax macadamia, they had begun to tax cows, they had begun to tax M-Pesa. In other words, what the action of this protest did was to slam the brakes on the appetite of government to tax the public. And then the public is saying, now, having slammed those brakes, what are you now doing with the taxes you are now collecting? So the conversation we will have the next time we have a space, and God willing, is now that there is this revenue, where does it go and what does it do? And the question of wastage and corruption will become maybe one of the most important issues that can frame the Jay-Z's questions. When you come to a constitutional amendment, the other one was called Punguza Mizigo. Perhaps that was a good beginning. Today, it may be Punguza Kodi or Punguza Tax, etc. And finally, I want to come to the issue of why it is important to call out Ruto's cabinet debacle. This cabinet debacle was tone deaf to the country, because a president's job is to inspire confidence in his people and to be able to guide them where they want to go, not where he thinks he is. And sometimes when you bring hope, the audacity of hope, as Barack Obama wrote, a country can rise up and face its challenges. The president actually gave a finger up to the country by actually reinstating the people he had removed. He did not give a new chapter in order for this conversation to go ahead. What he did is he dug in and said, Mutadu. And I want to say today that my understanding of this reshuffle and the return of Kindiki and those people has been Mutadu. And therefore, the question now that Gen Z and this country must answer, are we going to allow the president to stop there, or are we going to go further and say, hold on, it's not just the cabinet, it is the expenditure and the wastage in government. With those many words, I want to thank the whole team, and Mizani and Brief Scoop and Wanjiru for putting this together. Thank you very much. In the words of Sir Winston Churchill, for those who will march, and those who want to go ahead forward. He said that of all the virtues of a man, there is none more important than courage. So it is important for the young men and women who are out there and sometimes wonder that it is important to be courageous. Finally, it was William Shakespeare who said that they loseth that do buyeth with much care. This is a story of the man who wanted to save money so he could have chicken every day of his life. When he had enough money to have chicken every day of his life, he had no teeth to eat the chicken. So they loseth that do buyeth with much care. Good night from Tony Gashoka.
Tony, it's unfair to talk about chicken, and I come from a region that consumes chicken on every single opportunity that comes. And then you're here telling me I lose my teeth. I am offended.
And no less to another Bosi. Go ahead, Mizani.
Anyway, that was on a really joking note. Thank you, Tony, for your very engaging deliberations on this space tonight, including all the speakers that made time to be here. Our listeners, we don't take it for granted that you spent your time with us discussing matters that are emotive, matters that really are touching the heart of the nation, as we question the president and the current administration's heart on matters that concerns its cabinet recycling, if his ear is open to the reality of what we are facing, or is this simply an incompetent president and an incompetent government? So for that matter, we want to take this opportunity to thank you all, and we do hope if we raise questions, if you raise answers, they have been in one way or another addressing the issues we keep talking about. And if we didn't do that effectively, we request you to propose some of those solutions that we'll be looking at in the coming spaces. As of tomorrow, we'll look at a space on Mizani 254 that will be focusing on corruption, and it's about retooling integrity and accountability. Our guest will be Horton Irungu from Amnesty International, without forgetting Paula Kahumbu, who is a conservationist. And really, I want to invite all of you to that talk from 10 a.m. East African time. Much to be unpacked, and some of the questions that George was mentioning earlier on will be part of our conversation. See you then. My name is Likuyani Eli on behalf of Mizani 254 and Brief Scoop, who made this possible. We want to thank you. Have yourselves a great weekend. Na mujirushe. Lakini musianguke sana.
Lazima tunaanguka nayo. All that is left from me is to say thank you to my co-host Mizani, our top guest Tony Wanjiro for putting this together behind the scenes, producing all of this. Thank you to everyone who attended. Thank you to everyone who listened. And of course, thank you to everyone who made their contributions. Please, please, please do bear with us. It's never, this conversation doesn't end. We keep going. So we will be having discussions more than once. There's another one, as Mizani said, tomorrow, and we'll keep going the day after and throughout the week. So stay tuned, follow us, and stay tuned to all our notifications about additional spaces discussing all of these issues. Thank you so much. Have a good night, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. And tuendelee kuanguka nayo. Ruto must go, but more than just Ruto must go, we have to drain the swamp. We have to change the paradigm. We need a paradigm shift. Thank you. Good night.